Welcome to the Revenue Agency. In today's special edition of Coach's Corner, we dive deep into the stories and strategies of extraordinary coaches who are making a genuine impact in their communities. Each week, I bring you authentic voices from diverse niches, coaches who have faced their own challenges like burnout and brokenness, and turned those experiences into powerful catalysts for change. I'm Brittney Hall. Join me as we explore their journeys, unpack valuable insights, and discover how they've transformed their struggles into lessons that empower others. Whether a coach yourself or simply looking for inspiration, you won't want to miss these heartfelt conversations that illuminate the path to resilience and growth. Let's get started. All right, everybody. Hello to this episode from the Revenue Agency. This is the Coach's Corner. And today I'm so excited to be joined by Johanna Sanchez. She is a productivity coach. She's a mom. She is just an awesome businesswoman who really believes that you don't have to be burnt out to be successful. And I met her through Facebook and I was just drawn to her message, loved what she had to say, the best content. And I was like, hey, let's come on and let's have a conversation. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you today.
Hi, thank you.
Oh, I love your message. I myself have been completely burnt out where I'm like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. And I'm sure that you see that a lot.
Yeah.
And I know you've been through it too, but I would love if you would just kind of start by telling us about your journey. Like, how did you get to this place where you coach this for people?
Sure. I started in the online space back in 2018. So I have two older kids, and they were like doing their own thing, like totally self-sufficient. And I was working my butt off. And then my husband and I decided, let's have children. So we did. And then I was pregnant and he came home and I'm holding him and I was like, I can't go back to work. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Right. It was different having older kids and then having a little one. So I found this course and I dove into it and started as I guess it was a virtual assistant, doing some really sketchy stuff on Instagram that I like to forget, but there's some really dark spaces on
Oh
Instagram.
my.
Um, yeah, it was pretty enlightening. So I moved over to copywriting, and I fell in love with it. Absolutely all of it. The group that I was in, the work that I was doing, the people that I got to work with, and as we were talking earlier, it's a very male-dominated field. There's not that
Mm,
many women in direct response copywriting, which is what I was doing, like the ads and the sales pages and all that stuff.
yeah.
So I fell into that culture as well, right? I'm going to make $20,000 this month. I'm going to push. I'm going to do harder. This is all I have. Not thinking that the other kids, right? The other men in the industry didn't have all the other responsibilities that I had as a mom.
Yeah.
So I'm exhausted. I hit my income goals and I reached out to my coach and I was like, I hate my life. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I want to quit. I want to burn it all to the ground. And that's when she was like, oh, well, when was the last time you did anything for yourself? And I was like, I work 7 days a week. I can barely do
Yeah.
anything for anybody else. Like, I don't know what to do
Yeah.
here. So that's kind of how it progressed. She got me to start taking time for me.
Mhm.
And I mean, the shift that happened instant was like as soon as I took time for myself and my family, like things changed in my business and I was still getting my work done and I was still making the money I was supposed to make. I was just
Yeah.
also taking time for myself now, which is crazy, but it happens. Um, and then in that world as well, like they were like, okay, cool. Like you seem like you have it all together. You're going out, your posts aren't filled with like work and like you're not hustle, hustle, hustle. Like, how do you do this? Like some of my friends were losing clients because they weren't
Mhm.
getting their work done on time. They're like, how do you keep it all together? So I started teaching them. And then one of my coaches was like, hey, we're doing like a membership meeting, come down to Florida and teach them how to do this. So I started there and then it just kind of snowballed. They started sending people my way and I was like, I should just do this
Yeah,
instead
yeah.
of
Well, it's like there's a need, you know?
yes, yes.
Oh,
So
I
it
love
was
that.
pretty cool. So the long-winded story of how I got to this point.
No, I think it's wonderful. And I think it's really important for people to know that like just because you're burnt out, it doesn't mean that you just like shouldn't be doing that thing anymore, but maybe you need to like rearrange it.
Yeah.
I'm curious because I struggle with this because I'm like when you're an entrepreneur and you just have that in you, you do kind of touch business every day. I feel like I've learned balance, but it's almost like I'm still trying to, like, it's like you can either be going, 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 or you're like, I want to completely unplug and do nothing. And then,
Right.
but you got to like find that happy medium. But I'm curious when you started doing things for yourself and just kind of like taking time to just even like whatever you wanna do. Did you feel
Yeah.
guilty? Like, did it almost give you anxiety that, like, you felt like you
Yeah.
should be doing something because it's such a habit?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Because you're stuck doing things with your family or for yourself, thinking about your business. And then when you're doing your business, you're stuck thinking about your family and you're like, ah,
yeah,
how does this not work? So it just came down to like boundaries and understanding once you get those things in order and you know like I've done enough, it's okay to step out and go over here for a little while. And
mhm,
then know that you've done enough to step out and go back over this way for a little while. As long as you know what your goals are. Like my goal for my kids every day is to, have them tell me that they love me unprompted. And if they can say that to me without being prompted, I did my job for the day.
yeah,
Right? Like I don't have
I
to feel guilty about working because they know.
yeah,
And the other way, like as long as I'm doing like those three touch points, like you were saying, to move the needle in my business, all the other
mhm,
stuff is just
yeah.
busy work.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say to somebody I know, like, and I've been a 1099 contractor for a long time, but sometimes I've been just with like one specific business in a capacity where I would run operations for a company.
Yeah.
And the owner of one of the companies that I was working for, and this was the one that I got completely burned out, he would just like hit me all the time. It was like 9 o'clock at night, get a phone call, this, that. But I was so hungry for the opportunity and I was making really good money. And then I was like sacrificing time with my family. But how do you, like, help someone establish boundaries in something like that? Like, when somebody is so demanding, because it's like, you're not necessarily gonna change that person, and they might not respect your boundaries. What do you, like, recommend in a situation like that? Sorry, I'm, like, making it a personal coaching call. I'm
It's
like,
fine.
"Hold on."
It's fine. When you're working with an employer or someone else that's paying you, it's a little difficult, but you have to always, it's the same thing with everything that we do, just find the benefits for them, right?
Mhm.
Like there are hard scientific facts that state every single time you're interrupted from doing whatever you're doing, it takes 23 minutes to get back into focus. So if it's a quick phone call, a quick message, a quick, hey, grab this for me, you're derailed for 23 minutes every single time, right? And that adds up a lot throughout the day,
Oh,
depending on
yeah.
how many times you get interrupted.
Yeah.
So starting with facts, especially like not to say especially if it's men, but like men like solid hard facts. Tell me the bottom line. Like how much is this costing me? Well, how much do I charge an hour? Right. And then go from there.
I like
The
that.
other
That's
thing is
really smart.
you have to hold the boundaries yourself first. A lot of people don't do that because they feel bad, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah. So what are your goals? What are your values? So if you value family and you're answering emails at 9 p.m., you're destroying your own values, right? And that's not cool.
Mm.
So if we base our goals off of our values, it makes it easier to just remind ourselves, my values family, this is family time. We don't cross that line, you know?
Yeah, that's so good. I learned a long time ago, and then it's, sometimes hard to implement it, but that like your nose should really be like just like keeping that boundary for you. Like always defend that. That's like,
Yeah.
nope, that's not for me. Or I was raised, actually, my parents have been successful business owners for over 40 years. And so I grew up in that, but they were like, people always need to be able to get a hold of you. And so I was raised with that mentality. So it's like, if people aren't able to get a hold of me for a while, I feel like this weird guilt. But it's like
Mm,
I have to say I have to constantly walk myself through it. Like, it's okay. It's
yeah.
okay. Nothing's like an emergency. Like, it's not a big
Yeah.
deal. They're not mad at me because I haven't responded in an hour to a text message. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's just that like constant rewiring, which actually kind of is a good pivot point because you did a lot of study with brain science. And I
Yes.
would love to know, like, how do you educate people on that and make it simple to understand in like the work that you do now?
Lots of pictures.
Oh, that's so
Lots of
good. I
pictures.
love that.
Pictures and videos, honestly. So you'll hear all of the gurus, all of the life coaches, everybody out there that, has hundreds of thousands of views, and they always tell you your thoughts change your world, right? Change your thoughts, change your world. It's everywhere. And it's because your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy. So
Mm,
whatever you say in here is real according to your brain. And
yeah.
it might not be what you said. It could have been what family said or a message that you've heard over and over and over again, repeating, and it fuses these bonds in your brain, and that's now what we think, right? So you can unfuse those and create new thought patterns, which is why affirmations are great, which is why meditation's great, right? Like it's all rooted in stuff that works.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
like, well, it's actually, yeah, 100%. I mean, you see it in like the laws of attraction. You see it in like, just like you said, like the brain science, like these guys who are like neuroscientists that then fuse it with these other methodologies. And it's like,
yeah.
it is. It is the way it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So just even just again rooting it in stuff that people know already, so it's not so whimsical,
Mhm.
and just helping them see, and then like little quick wins. You know, we do lots of reward stuff. So if you want to retrain your brain that you hit the goals that you set, then start setting really tiny goals and hitting them. Like I'm going to get up 5 minutes earlier today, and then get up 5 minutes earlier and give yourself a reward for getting up 5 minutes earlier, right? Maybe you get to
Yeah.
listen to a really fun song or do a dance studio or whatever, but small little rewards, not just rewarding ourselves for the $10,000 month, right? There's so much that you have to do to get there. Reward yourself along the way. And that's what I tell people, and it kind of makes it more fun, and you are rewiring your brain in the process.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. Do you have any things like any books or anything where you like have pulled from with some of that? Like, do you have any favorites in the industry when it comes to like the
Joe
brain?
Dispenza is my
I was gonna
favorite.
say Joe Dispenza is like
Um,
the bell for me.
there is another man, and I always forget his name. He's got dark hair and he looks like he works out a lot.
I'm like, throw a rock at some of these guys. That's awesome. Joe
What's
Dispenza is so
all
good
of
though.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's amazing. He was my first, my first.
oh,
And like I fell for this other guy as well. And I can't remember his name. I really wish I could. But the two of them, they're so smart. They really are so smart. And they have very different views. But I like Joe Dispenza because he roots all of his stuff in research and science. It's not
mhm.
just like manifestation where you close your eyes and you think really hard about something, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I like the research. I like the science. So
Yeah, well,
that's why
if
he's
you
really
have kind of
important.
a scientific mind, it makes sense. I actually it's funny, my degree is in human biology. So like that's what I did in college was I studied the human body and like how it
Nice.
works. And so I really enjoy him as well because like you said, it's back up with facts, but he does a lot of his own research. I think he has his own where they do a bunch of brain scans and all these things.
Mhm.
And it's just and I love it. I actually heard him on a podcast a little bit ago, and he was saying that he actually corrected some of the stuff that he was teaching years ago because they've come out with new stuff. And
Mhm.
a lot of times people won't do that. They won't go,
Yeah.
well, we weren't wrong, but we were a little off on that. So now we're kind of correcting
Sure.
that or new research has come about. And I love that he's, really good at
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, he's awesome.
yeah. And he's a great teacher. So yeah, that's so cool. I love that you pull from that. So when it comes to people who, we all want to be successful, especially when we're in the entrepreneur space, it's like we're betting on ourselves, we're trying to create that financial freedom. How has success redefined for you and how do you help people define it? Is it all just like hitting those personal goals? Like, is it financial? Like, how do you help people figure out what success is for them?
It's a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
Because we're taught to like, oh, you got to take off this hat and put on that hat. But I don't wear hats, right? I'm one sentient being and I'm
Yeah.
not separating all of the other things. So my values are the same for business and they're the same for my personal life. So all my goals are integrated together. And the best way to not get stuck in that whole push, 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 grind, grind, grind is to find out what your realistic number is. I
Mm.
was at a mastermind and the guy running it was like, okay, guys, when's enough? And we're like, oh, what do you mean when's enough? Like once you hit 20, you got to make 30. Once you hit 30, you got to make 40,
Yeah,
right?
it
Like
always has to be more, more, more.
yeah. He
Yeah.
was like, well, let's figure out the numbers. And he walked us through like, a 6 bedroom mansion, a Maserati, like astronomical. How much does it cost for a personal like assistant in your home to cook and clean and make sure your calendar's not messed up? And it was only like 22,000. And I was like,
Oh,
well, I don't even want all that stuff. So he
yeah.
said, figure out what your actual numbers are. And I
Mm.
did. And I was like, oh, I'm good.
You're like,
I'm
I'm doing great.
like
Yeah.
I don't have to like hit and hustle and push. Sure, if I want, I know I can, but like I don't need that next jump, right? Like I know now in my heart of hearts that I'm good here. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what I help people understand. Like, find out what your values are, match your goals to your values, and find out your solid my number, not
Yeah.
somebody else's number. Like, I don't want to be a guru. I don't want all that responsibility. I like where I'm at.
Yeah,
I,
and
this
it's
is
like
great.
you're doing work that really matters to you. You're
Yeah.
providing the life that you say that you want, right? And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people in the coaching space, because I think there's a lot of people that call themselves coaches that actually don't coach. They just talk at people or they have like a really influential brand, but
Mhm.
it's like I think coaching is just too loosely used. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that it's this mindset that you should always want more and not if like you're happy with what you have, it's like it's not good enough. You're just playing
Right.
small, and that's kind of the message behind it, and it's like,
Mhm.
no.
Yeah.
And
I'm
like
happy.
yeah, and I think too, and and I love men. I'm a big like fan of the men in the world, but I
I
think as a
agree.
woman, we're wired differently. And it's actually, there's a lot of studies too. One of my clients had on his podcast the guy who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And it
Mm-hmm.
talks about how women, when they're in that hustle and grind mode and they're in like that work world, our testosterone has to raise so much to like be at that level. And then when we like, so then our estrogen drops and then relationships are challenging because we want to be hormonally in certain balances, to be with our partners and with our kids and all this stuff. And so I'm kind of like, that's not healthy for women. And like
Mm.
maybe men, maybe, getting jacked up and doing whatever, like maybe that really drives them and that's great for men. Like, I don't know. Like you could
Right.
probably speak to that better than I could. But I think definitely as women, we have to know that like we're probably not designed to be like the same,
Right.
you
Right.
know. Do
Yeah.
you work with men and women? Sorry.
Mm, not really.
Mainly
Um,
women?
I market specifically to women because we are so different.
Yeah.
We like traditional productivity stuff works for men. I can tell them color block your schedule and stick to it, and they're like, okay. And if I tell
Done.
a woman to do that, she'd be like, what is wrong with you? Like, you can't color block and stick to it with all the other stuff going on. So
Mhm.
there's a big difference. So I do generally just work with women. I have worked with a couple men just because they've reached out and said, hey, like, I need this kind of help, not that kind of help. But that's few and far in between.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Okay, so just because you mentioned it, I'm a big fan of like time blocking, but then leaving white space for like maybe stuff or like flexibility within it. But
Yes.
I've always been like for me, how I work, like it has to be on a calendar. I won't get it done. Like I
Mhm.
completely forget about it. So how do you suggest that people stay organized but keep the flexibility in
Yeah.
their life? Because
It's
it's like anything
definitely
could come up.
100% white space. I always say if people are like nervous about it, just do 10 minutes to start. All of my calendar appointments have a 10-minute buffer before and after.
Nice.
Because maybe I have to use the bathroom. Like,
Right.
maybe.
Or eat.
Right. Get up for a second. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
sit here forever.
Yeah.
But maybe, just maybe, there is an actual emergency that someone needs you for 5 minutes. And
Mhm.
after I'm doing this thing for an hour, I have 5 minutes and I can reach out to them without panicking how you're going to fit them in or how it's going to mess other stuff up. The other thing is schedule in your fun first,
Oh, I
right?
love that.
So,
Yeah.
what was recommended to me and what changed my life was 10 hours a week. That has nothing to do with business. And that's what I recommend to everybody else. Sometimes I freaked out when I heard that at first. So start with 5, right? But work up to 10. I schedule that before anything else. And then, I put in my meetings and then I work around everything else from there. Um, and then I turn off all my notifications. That's how I reached out to you this morning because I looked at my calendar and I'm like, that's funny. It's not in there because I don't even check my calendar throughout the day. I put
Yeah.
an alarm in my phone that
Mm,
says 5 minutes before this is what you're supposed to go do. And
yeah.
my whole day is alarmed out
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
this
No,
to
that's
be done.
great. That's great. I always, because people be like, well, what do you have going on this week? I'm like,
Mm,
I don't know.
yeah,
Like, because I live by my calendar. So the night before or the morning of, like, I get up, I work out first thing in the morning. It's just how I'm wired to go. And yeah, and then it's like, I'll look at my calendar. And today I was like, awesome. I've got my morning open. I've got a
yeah,
couple things in the afternoon and then open again. So it's like that same thing. But
yeah,
that sometimes still I'm like, am I gonna go broke because I'm not busy? Like, or,
right.
it's like a real fear. And I'm like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so it's hard, right, to break out of that cycle. And a lot of times when you're in it, you're like, I feel like I got nothing done today. And then we
Mhm.
start feeling really bad about it. So if you just write down every single thing that you do throughout the day, like I worked out, I made breakfast, lunch, and dinner for my family. Like nobody's going to die of starvation because I was there to feed
Yeah.
them and make sure they were
I
well
cook.
healthy. Right. Right. You
Yeah.
have to do the prep thing and then you have to do your phone calls. Like literally write everything down at the end of the day. And you'll be like, wow, I accomplished so much. And you'll start to feel better about not hustling because we hustle every day. We
Yeah.
do. People,
Yeah,
people, people
100%.
depend on us to live. So that's something that we have to remember as well.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So, who like I'm curious, do you have some client success stories? Like anybody that and you don't have to obviously name names, but
Yeah.
just some really cool success stories that you've seen come out
Yeah.
of just working with some people and just the results they're getting.
Yes. So my favorite client, she wasn't even a long-term client. It was like a quick, it probably took a month. She came to me because she had a fitness studio,
Mhm.
23 employees, and she was working 16-hour days. And she just
Oh.
had a baby. And she's still working, right? And she's like, I'm tired. I don't know how to do this. Like, I lost her director of ops, moved, and she was in the process of training a new one. And I'm like, but I don't understand why you're working so much. Like, help
Yeah,
me figure
what are
this
you
out, right?
doing for those hours?
Like, right, what's going on? So she had four managers, leadership team managers, and one was the new person. So clearly she wasn't fully integrated yet. She was still being trained. And so I sat down with her and we went through her own schedule on how to get her stuff in order because she wasn't even able to exercise because if someone called out or there was an emergency and she was there, like she's like, I run the fitness studio and I'm not exercising. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So we got her stuff in order. We set up like some hard boundaries. You know, she had an open door policy. Like you can still have an open door policy with boundaries. we
Yeah.
can do the same
Like
thing.
these hours is when your open door
Yes.
is. Yeah.
Yes. But the main change that we did was making her leadership team the go-between from the employees to her because they were going directly to her. If there's a
Yeah.
call out, I'm coming to you. No, if there's a call out, you go to the person that's in charge of the fitness team,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
we put a lot of that in place. We put a lot of SOPs in place in case somebody called out or, somebody was missing. There was a hierarchy, like a whole system of a hierarchy because it was very like relaxed and laid back.
Yeah.
And within 2 to 3 weeks, like she was nervous, like the team wasn't going to feel it and the employees were going to feel like that she was pushing them away. And she messaged me and she's like, this is insane. Like everybody is having, like, they loved it and everybody's excited to take up more. And she goes, I'm working like only 10 hours a day now instead of 16. I was like,
Yeah.
that's good. Like much
Like
better than it was.
start. Yeah.
We'll get you there. But yeah, I mean, it was tough because she was in the process of like training the new director of ops and all that stuff. But the team they really picked it up and everybody was super excited to get more of a system in place. And she's now talking about opening a second location because they have the systems and the processes in place. So that's my favorite, you
Yeah,
know?
well, that's so cool. I love it because it's not just like one-on-one coaching where you're talking about ideas, you're like actually helping them implement. And it sounds like you have a good understanding of how a business should function
Yeah.
with like the structures and operations, where it's like, like you said, like creating the hierarchy of
Mhm.
communication. And that's really cool. So you definitely have a knowledge on like that side of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that. I love that. Well, and I think that, like I said, I just think that this message just needs to be like shouted from the
I
rooftops.
know.
And like that's what, because I don't see, I think almost it's like the algorithm now notices that I like stuff like that. So now I'm kind of seeing more of it, but it's usually by like accounts that aren't like a person. It's like her mindset, or whatever. It's like not like actual coaches.
Yeah.
Because I think that people really sell this idea of like, you need to want more and I'm going to teach you how. It's like a sales tactic, but in
Right.
reality, it's like that's not healthy. And I think that really great coaches want to help people live a better life,
Yes.
you
Yeah,
know? And
absolutely.
so,
It's hard because every time I go to a meeting, like a networking meeting, they're like, "Oh, who's your ideal client?" And I'm like, "Do you want my ideal client or do you want the people I work with?" Right? Because my ideal client would be somebody who's like, "I should probably start to get my life in order now before
yeah,
things get crazy." My
yeah.
clients that I work with, everything's on fire. Like because productivity, people don't really see it as something that makes them money. Right. So
Mhm.
we always go for the other things that are going to up level our skills and do this other stuff. But in actuality, when you can get your business in order and your systems in place, you maybe you'll make more money, maybe you'll work less and make the same amount of money, which is even better to me. Right?
Right? Yeah. It's like if
But
you're making a fine amount of money, like, like where it's good.
yes,
Um, yeah, but you're just
yeah.
like, I love my life.
Yeah. But I
It's
think
like,
that's why a lot of people don't go with productivity coaching or decide to be a productivity coach. Like I met a girl the other day who was a Facebook ads coach and productivity coach. And I'm like,
oh,
oh, okay.
kind of weird.
I see what you're doing there.
I'm like, yeah, funny because like I help people with like what they do and like I coach coaches, and so I'm like,
Yeah.
those don't go together. That's really
No,
odd.
no, they don't.
Pick one.
Yeah. You can
But
throw the productivity stuff in your course if you'd
yeah,
like, but
exactly.
like, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's funny. That's funny. So I was gonna ask you a quick question. I'm trying to think. Oh, this is just like a funny thing that I've noticed, like when I've gone into coaching businesses and worked with teams and stuff, is that sometimes people think that they're being productive, but they're actually like it's so funny. I have this one guy, he was like, I'm working 40 hours a week, and like I know this industry really well. And I'm like, what the hell could you be doing in this business for 40 hours a week if you're not the guy on the screen? Like, what could you possibly be doing? And I think that he was like doing a lot of scrolling and that kind of stuff. But I was like, that's not doing anything for this
yeah.
business. So I was like, you really could be working probably like 5 to 10 hours a week. And instead of
Mhm.
staring at your computer screen for the other 30 and be like, have the same amount of productivity, so I'm just
Mhm.
curious if you sometimes find that with people where you're like, you're not really as busy as you think. You're just busy because you're looking at your phone or on a device, but you're not actually working.
Yeah, all the
You
time,
find
all
that
the
with
time.
people?
And so that's when like time audits. People hate time audits, but I'm telling you, they tell you all the deepest, darkest secrets.
Oh
Everybody.
yeah, that and food logs.
Yes, yes. And it's like, oh my goodness, I scrolled for 2 hours. I'm like, yeah, you did. Like,
You
that's what
did.
happens when you do a time audit. You figure that stuff out real fast.
Yeah.
And that really is eye-opening because then you just start to see like, wow, either every day at this time I do nothing. Maybe I need to like take a break, go do something productive, or whatever else. Like maybe that's not where I should be. Or you start going into like I'm watching, three episodes of whatever show in the middle of the day, and I should really be doing X, Y, and Z.
Mm.
Time audits are like my absolute favorite, and I usually don't lead with those because people are like, I hate them, I'm not doing them, but we get to them eventually.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need to see
Well,
what you're doing.
there has to be an awareness. Yeah, I
Yeah,
coached health and fitness for a long time, and people would be like, "Well, I eat healthy." I'm like, "But what are you eating? Like, there's no
yeah.
way you're 80 pounds overweight if like you're just super healthy."
Oh
Like,
my goodness. I hired a personal trainer and I was doing so, so well. And he's like, you gotta not be following the meal plan. I'm like, dude, I'm only the only thing I cheat is like I have a little peanut butter at the end of the day. And he's
was he
like,
like
okay, we're
measure
allowed to
it?
do that. I hawk the spoon in there and I'm like licking away like a lollipop. He's like, that's like 500 extra calories. You're ruining everything. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh man, yeah, yeah. It's so funny, yeah, because it's just like it's the little things that we go, well, it's not that big of a deal. And then by the time, whether it's food, time,
Yeah,
whatever, it's
yeah,
like it's a slippery slope. And it's like we don't realize it because I can get into that. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. And then you
yeah,
get the result and you're like, well, what the hell? How did I get
yeah.
here? It's like all those little things, they really
If
compound.
if you save 10 hours a week, which most of my clients can save 10 hours a week after working together, right? And
Wow.
you make $10,000 months, at the
Hmm.
end of the year, that's $18,000 that you've saved.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
if you're
incredible.
willing to, doom scroll for an hour a day, you're paying Facebook $18,000 technically of your
Yeah.
time, you know?
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible. That's incredible. I think that like so much about what you do, it's really just like bringing a lot of awareness because if
Mhm.
people aren't even aware, then they don't even know and they don't
Right.
know like that you can really help them.
Right.
So where do people like how do people work with you? Is it one-on-one? Is that like your main way that you work with people?
Yeah, I have one-on-one and I'm starting to trickle into group coaching to see how that goes.
Yeah.
I still offer a lot of one-to-one calls with that just because that's the important to me. I like the one-on-one, like this isn't cookie cutter stuff. Like you're different than somebody else who's doing the exact same thing you're doing just because our lives are different. And
Yeah.
I don't feel like we can really fall into that um, cookie cutter stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do that. I'm thinking about a membership, but I'm not 100% on that yet. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah. So
We'll
right now
see.
people like mainly you work with them one-on-one, maybe thinking about group coaching, but it's not like set in stone yet.
It's out and about. Yeah.
Oh,
Is
okay.
that I
Okay,
didn't do
cool.
like any crazy hard launch or anything, but it's
But it's
doable.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's an
there.
offer that people could like
Hmm.
maybe dip their toe in the pool if they're like, I'm not totally
Yes.
sure, but I mean, I'm sold on it. Like, I think this is brilliant. I'm like, I could talk to you all day.
I know, I know.
Um, oh, I have one more question. Sorry. I'm curious about, I was going to wrap it up and then this popped into my head. And I just wanted to ask you, do you, when you first start working with a client, do you factor in, like personalities or like when they feel the most energized or like any of that kind of stuff that's like very personal to
Yes.
like, or do you have them
Yes.
do any like assessments or anything like that?
So there's a values test that I have them do because number one, like my values were different than I thought they were when I did the test. And how am I going to have good goals if my values aren't aligned with my goals, right? I
Yeah.
had a client that wanted to make $1 million that year. It was last year. We met in March and she was not close. And we did her values test and she valued freedom over everything. Like she used to live in a van and now she was in Airbnb. She was working for 3 agencies and she was feeling awful, and I'm like, well,
Mhm.
your goal is misaligned with your values. I'm not saying you can't make $1 million a year, but we're going to find a different way. And
Yeah.
she was like, that's eye opening. So we always start with a values test. And then, yes, I have an energy tracker as well,
Mhm.
that I have them do before the time audit because it's more fun to track your energy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Some people, most people like 10 to 2, that's when they have the most energy. But I
Mhm.
had a client that was like, don't tell me not to work between 9 and 1 a.m. because that's when she was the most awake. And I'm like, get it, girl. Like, that's fantastic, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everybody's different. So yeah, we definitely do an energy tracker. We have to know when we're most focused and when we need to take a rest. Like some people need a nap in the middle of the day. Well,
Mhm.
don't schedule like research at that time. It's not going to go well for you.
No, no. I love that because I've noticed with myself that like I'm the most like creative in the mornings.
Yeah.
And then I like to take a big kind of break in the afternoon or do stuff that doesn't require a lot of like my mind. But then sometimes like in the evenings, that's when I can write like copy for emails and things and kind of
Yeah.
schedule that stuff when I'm like hanging out with my kids and they're watching a show or something.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so I was just yeah, that's really cool. I don't know, I just love everything about what you're doing. I think it's just amazing. So, do you have like people listen to this because they're going to and they're gonna go, "That's cool. I didn't even know like that this was a thing." How can they find you?
I actually just started a podcast. I think there's 3 episodes up. It's
Okay.
everywhere. So it's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, Apple, wherever. I Googled it and it's like in places I didn't even know existed.
Oh, cool.
It's called Hustle to Harmony.
Oh, I love that.
And I'm in
Okay,
a
so
bright
Hustle to
pink
Harmony podcast.
jumpsuit. So
Oh, I love it. Okay, so we'll link that in the show notes. And then what about like a website or an email or like how do they get in contact with you?
More Hours Collective. So it's morehourscollective.com. Hello at More Hours Collective. Don't try and DM me on Facebook because those are a hot mess, but Instagram's cool.
Okay. No Facebook,
Please.
Instagram's great. Well, I'm so glad that you and I got connected because I know it was through Facebook, but okay, awesome. Well, we're gonna link all of that.
Mhm.
This has been such an amazing conversation. I know it's gonna be so eye-opening for so many
Oops.
people, and I think that if they take anything, it's like know that it's okay to like want life balance and that it's
Yeah.
really possible. What would
Yeah.
you love if you could just say something to women who are maybe on the edge of burnout or they're like completely like, I don't know how I'm going to keep going. Like what piece of advice or encouragement would you give them just to kind of wrap us up?
There is light on the other side of hustle. Find what you enjoy and schedule it in your calendar. And if you're at that point, I know a lot of ladies will tell me like, I don't even know what I like anymore.
Mm.
Think about what you liked when you were in high school. What was that stuff that you did that you totally enjoyed? Did you like doodling or drawing or running or, bowling or whatever the heck? Do that. Or just laying outside in the sun, right? Do more of that, and be intentional about it because you are your business's number one investment. And if you're not taking care of yourself, nobody else is going to either.
Yeah, that's so good. So
Nice.
good. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time,
you.
especially for someone who I know is like very serious about their time. I mean, I'm completely honored that you came and spent time with me. So thank you so much. I'm excited to get this message out to as many people as we can. And yeah, so people
Thank
can
you.
find you.
It was
So
fun.
thank you so much. All right. We will see you next time.